The Professional Hunters Association of South Africa would like to extend their sincere gratitude to Mr. Derek Watts and his team from Carte Blanche for acknowledging the role PHASA plays within the wildlife industry. We know that the entire interview can never be broadcast due to time constraints. However, for the viewers who didn't get to see it all, herewith additional footage of the interview between Mr. Derek Watts and Richard York of PHASA.
Let's put it on the line, Richard. In 2015, there was a resolution which opposed captive bred lion hunting.
Yes.
You agree to that?
Yes, I agree to that.
Then, at the meeting more recently, the lobby pro captive bred lion hunting virtually took over.
No, that's not quite the truth, sir. What you need to realize, the 2017 AGM and conference, which was held last year, was a milestone for our industry because it was the first year where we introduced a mobile app. So all members from around the country, you ask the question, where do we all come from? We're an outdoors association. People live far. So it was the first time that all members from throughout the country could vote and have their say. And the decision to endorse these 8 farms was made through a collective vote for the first time that allowed all members to vote, not just the selected few that could afford to be at the conference.
That doesn't explain the total turnaround from being opposed to captive bred lion hunting to supporting it.
Okay. The first proposal in 2015 was not based on scientific fact. If I may quote for you from the non-detrimental findings that was released on the 23rd of January 2018, at present, there are no major threats to wild and wild-managed lion populations within South Africa. The trophy hunting of captive-bred lions poses no threat to wild lion populations within South Africa, and is thought that captive lions may in fact serve as a buffer to potential threats to wild lions by being a primary source of hunting trophies and derivative products. Is it not questionable that we ask, why is South Africa the only country where lion numbers have increased compared to the rest of Africa?
Because they're all in enclosures.
No. Those lions are not counted. You must remember...
Our lion population has been decimated.
No, by no chance.
There are something like, 3,100 free-roaming lions in the country. But let's not go into the details of how many lions. And our argument isn't against whether it supports or against wild lions in the wild. Okay, so what I want to know is, are you aware of the image of South Africa when it comes to hunting?
Yes, for sure.
With hunting associations and also bodies like Born Free?
Yes, we are aware of that.
And what do you think that image is?
Now, when we talk about decimation...
What is that image of South Africa?
The image of South Africa at the moment is being portrayed very negatively by certain journalistic viewpoints. And if we have a look quickly, all the articles, read them, they mention canned hunting, whereas us as an association are totally opposed to canned hunting. But the journalists can't avoid not using that sensationalistic wordplay to downtrodden our message that we're actually trying to bring through. We've got 7,000 lions. Do we bury our head in the sand, or do we take accountability and try and find a meaningful solution?
Richard, how can you say that? The reason there are so many lions in cages and enclosures are because of your support for captive bred lion hunting.
Negative, sir.
What do you mean negative? If there wasn't hunting, why would people have started these breeding facilities?
South Africa, and we need to take it back to the concept. South Africa's game ranching model has gone from 3 farms in the 1960s to over 9,000 farms now, and it's because of the value we give to wildlife. Take that value away and you decimate populations. We sit with a unique model that we've converted marginal agricultural land into thriving ecosystems for wildlife. So what you need to remember You're asking why are we endorsing the 8 farms? Under the Biodiversity Management Plan, the Minister tasked us with assessing the management of the captive lion population. We were tasked with that role by government. Must we just put our head in the sand and not try and take responsibility thereof?
Read the Born Free report, they give loads of instances.
Okay, now
They
if I
quote
may,
hunting associations.
the Born Free report, unlike this government gazette, which is drafted by the South African National Biodiversity Society, how much of the Born Free report was peer-reviewed or published in any form of journal? It's got very little scientific backing, if that makes sense. It's public opinion.
But
And
again, that's
public
your
opinion.
opinion.
Yes,
And they've spent
and the
years
Born
on that
Free-
report, and it's a collective of a lot of scientific background information
And why
and
can't
present
it
research.
get published or peer-reviewed?
Because it's not a university report. Do you think everything gets peer reviewed?
Surely for it to have some form of scientific standing, it needs to be reviewed.
Richard,
We need to back our-
you're dodging
we need to
around the
back-
basic issue. You're dodging around, you're tap dancing. All I want you to acknowledge is that captive bred lion hunting is damaging the image of the country as a hunting destination.
I will not acknowledge
abroad.
that, sir, because it's factually incorrect. According to our internal investigation overseas, that was not the case. The 3 biggest damages to brand South Africa is crime, land expropriation without compensation, and the import of firearms into the country. Those are our 3 biggest concerns. When we raised the captive bred lion industry issue with overseas tourists, very, very few even raised it as a concern. And it is what we discussed with in terms of the confusion between captive and canned, and the association in the media to say PHASA accepts canned hunting, when in actual fact you described it perfectly. We accept an exclusive few farms that we're trying to set a higher standard and principle. And that message
Okay.
isn't getting to the public. So yes, I agree with you, because that message that we are accepting and taking responsibility for 8 farms is not getting to the public, and it is being misconstrued. That does have a damaging effect, yes. But it is not because of our actions, but because of the way things are being represented in the media. Now, what's very important for PHASA is animal welfare. Those 8 properties, of them 6 have been investigated by the NSPCA through their regional checks over the last 18 months, and not one complaint was filed with those ranches themselves or with those breeding farms. So we try to encourage the guys to say, listen, yes, there's a legal standard, but we want to lift our standard, and we want to encourage the people to say, listen chaps, what you're doing, although it is legal, it's not to the standard which we would prefer, and we would want to encourage them and motivate them.
But you're
to
covering such a small percentage of the lion breeders. 8.
And when you start with anything, small change happens in small increments. We need to start somewhere, and this was the place where we started. These 8 farms have already been investigated and accredited by PHASA members. Part of the higher standards is that animals being raised for or being bred for the hunting industry may not, up to an age of 3 to 7 months, be taken away from their parents. So it's not these major petting zoos that's been portrayed out there in the media. Those 8 accredited ranches, that may not take place. On those 8 accredited ranches, the lions may not be bottle fed. If they are
You look
bottle
after
fed,
these 8 ranches. What are you doing about the other 192? Are you doing anything about
you
them?
need to take the lead. And by taking the lead on these 8 ranches, we're hoping that we can show the correct way and manner to do things. And we need to take accountability, Mr. Watson. With all wildlife in South Africa, we need to find sustainable utilization models. As our mandate as PHASA has to do with the hunting thereof. The bone trade, that has to do with CITES quotas, etc. And I am aware that there's a robust independent scientific body that's currently being employed by the government to investigate meaningful solutions for this.
But what are you doing as PHASA?
As PHASA, it is not currently our mandate, so we represent the hunters.
So your mandate is to support captive bred lion hunting, but not to monitor it?
We do monitor it from a certain aspect, yes.
How many of the 192 facilities have you been to?
Our mission at the moment is on the 8 accredited farms to create in line with our policies.
So the chosen few get looked after, and 192 facilities just
It's not the chosen
carry
few.
on breeding
It's the few
regardless.
that want to set a higher standard and that is more socially acceptable.
Why did so many hunters and 7 past presidents resign?
You should have to ask them that question themselves, sir. I can't answer for
Well, we
them.
have asked them.
And what was the
Because they
consensus?
say that the way that you support, sorry, do you mind looking straight?
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
We have asked them, and they say it's because the way you support captive bred lion hunting is unethical.
Okay. On what regard?
In what regard? It's because it's damaging the image of the country overseas, and because it's against the basic principles of hunting
All people have a view.
and a free
Fair chase.
and a fair chase.
Okay. Are you aware that the current government legislation in terms of the hunting of captive bred lions or the hunting of predators in South Africa is of a much higher standard than all of the other African countries, where fair chase is actually prescribed as a legal requirement within our government norms and standards? Fair chase is one of the crucial aspects within that.
Richard, you haven't explained the split in PHASA.
The split has to do with personal views, and that's why I'm saying you will have to ask those individuals. But my biggest
7
question,
past presidents.
is why would 7 past presidents leave after a majority membership decision was made, where we had the first time ever every single member could vote on an electronic app, where in the past how the system worked is that we would have an AGM or a conference and it would be what we would call a proxy war.
Richard, all that proves
you may
is
ask-
that the majority are in favour of captive bred lion hunting. That's all it proves.
In sustainable
Whether it's right or
aspects.
wrong is another question.
If we need to talk about ethics, my ethics and your ethics are totally different, and we mustn't let ourselves apply selective morality. Now, those certain few that have now said we oppose captive bred lion hunting, have you asked them, have you stopped lion hunting? And
No,
the
they haven't
answer-
stopped lion
No,
hunting.
exactly. Why? Because they're hunting other lions in other areas. So there's wealth mongering to a large degree taking place here, where let's oppose the greatest economic contribution income, which is captive bred lion hunting, and then we can push up our prices for hunting other lions. That's the question that needs to be asked to those that have left. Have you stopped all lion hunting? And the answer will be no.
Agreed.
They've got certain other
Agreed.
line and they're looking after their own interests. So my question is, why did 7 past presidents resign on a membership decision taken?
You have close ties with the Predator Association.
We're trying to work with them, yes, because they've come up with a set of standards to improve the industry, and we find that commendable, and we're trying to find solutions. So yes, we do communicate with them, as do we communicate with all other role players within the industry. We have to try and bring everyone together for a common goal of going forward to represent the industry.
Don't you think, Richard, that times have changed? That you are being isolated, being left behind because of modern day ethics and sensitivities?
It is a concern, especially in terms of social media, how things can be taken and grotesquely taken out of context so quickly. What the role that conservation plays, very few people actually understand. If we talk about conservation, that you must conserve water, do we say we mustn't utilize it?
Well, we
We
must
say we must
use
use
it
it wisely.
sparingly. Mm.
So if we talk about conservation of lions, does it say we mustn't utilize it?
No,
must
but we
utilise it
mustn't
wisely.
overbreed and leave
Agreed.
thousands of cubs to
Agreed.
a dreadful
Agreed.
fate.
Agreed. And that is what we need to do, is to ensure that the welfare of those animals is our number one crucial concern, and that the utilization of it is done sustainably and in line with our constitution. In terms of South Africa, sir, it's important that we look at where can lions survive here. There's only 40 small reserves.
But we've said there's no problem with lions surviving in the country.
Okay. Why? Because according
Because
to this
they've all been bred in cages.
No, because according to this scientific report, we are actually providing a buffer zone for those lions. We sit with a unique model that we've converted marginal agricultural land into thriving ecosystems for wildlife. And that's what we must remember. Why is South Africa the only country in Southern Africa that had an increase in their wild and wild managed lion populations? But yet you use the word that it was decimated. It wasn't decimated, sir.
I wasn't talking about wild lions, Richard.
What's happening in our wild managed lion populations? The lions in Madikwe, Shamwari, those type of places that Born Free actually supports, they've been given contraceptives to stop them breeding. They've been euthanized because of overpopulation. No, we need to look at everything. What is being done about those populations?
I don't see how you correlate that, Richard.
We need to look at both. I would like to ask you a simple question also.
Yeah.
Is it acceptable that the Born Free Association made more money in the same financial year as the entire industry from the hunting of lions, but yet only contributed 16% to the conservation of those lions, where they only have an estimated 32 lions, and they are predicting that 15 of those lions need to be euthanized because, as you said, one of the gravest concerns is habitat loss. They haven't got habitat to send those lions to. So those lions are being fed contraceptives to stop them breeding, but then we call ourselves Born Free. Well, how many cubs are actually being born free in those situations?
Richard, I asked a question. Is it worth cheapening the hunting industry and tarnishing our image abroad just so a few people can prosper?
We're not cheapening the industry, sir. We're looking after the industry as a whole by taking accountability. If we said no to captive lion hunting, would it go away? Somewhere, somehow, someone has to stick their head up and say, listen, chaps, I deem what is currently happening not to be of higher and good enough standard. And we need to take the lead in ensuring that that standard is improved.
With the other 192 breeding facilities, are there any other government or other restrictions on the breeding process or the number of lions being allowed to be bred?
There are legal requirements in terms of what government issues by law, and I think it's under the NEMBA Act, the National Environment Management of Biodiversity Act, that stipulates and regulates what they must do and how they must be governed. So yes, there are rules and stipulations for them. But our biggest task that we are discussing here is not what is legal. We're discussing what is socially acceptable for brand South Africa. And that's why we've identified the 8 farms.
Do you agree that there are far too many lions? Do you agree that there are far too many lions being bred around the country?
At the moment, we would have to have a look at the scientific studies regarding that. What is the impact of the bone trade? And is there enough to sustain those markets without jeopardizing the wildlife population? And that's something we'll only find out after the scientific authority has investigated that going forward. And what we are trying to do on a higher step, which is also vitally important for us, is the genetic integrity of our wild managed lions is under question. Because a lot of the lions have been introduced because of ecotourism rather than the long-term sustainability of the population. And we've had large increases. From the first study ever done on 24 small reserves and 1 private captive bred facility, the results were that alleles that were missing amongst wild lion populations were found within that captive bred population, which justifies further research into the genetic fitness and possibility of introducing those genes. And that is what we want to bring through as well. We would like to bring in that we evaluate lions on their core and that we make decisions based on the correct social structure in terms of ensuring the greatest genetic diversity possible, to ensure that there's no inbreeding, that there's no lack in genetic fitness which makes them prone to disease.
From everything that you're saying, which seems to always come back to the economic feasibility,
yes,
Are you saying that lions should actually just be treated like livestock?
In huge context of South Africa's model, what is wild in South Africa at the moment? Where is wild? I mean, we're conducting this interview in the middle of Pretoria. Where's the wildlife around us here? South Africa's entire wildlife population has been deeply fragmentized by roads, fences.
Sure, and that's around the world.
That has a huge impact.
But I'm interested just in your answer. Are you saying that a lion, because of the economic feasibility, should be regarded just as livestock?
I think all wildlife should be regarded as an economy for the rural people in terms of generating a sustainable income. That is the greatest crucial key to our conservation model. If it pays, it stays. If it cannot contribute and pay for itself, then other alternative farming methods will be found. Why have we gone from the 3 farms to 9,000? Is because the animals on the land paid for themselves, and the greatest economic contributor there is the hunting industry.
So your answer indicates that wildlife, including lions, should be treated like livestock?
It should be utilized, yes. It should be utilized holistically. And it's quite interesting, even Kenya, who's banned hunting since, I stand to be corrected, I think the 1970s, 1980s, have now approached South Africa to come with utilization models to help them educate their people to bring back their wildlife numbers. They've lost, since they've banned hunting, 80-90% of their wildlife populations. That's had a huge detriment to the population. So it's important that we find workable solutions. Going forward in future, there's going to become less land available.
I agree with that.
And people are going to become more and more. And already South Africa, with one of the greatest population densities in Africa, was able to issue a non-detrimental report regarding wild lions.
Richard, there's a lot of what you said I agree with, strangely enough. But
Can we do some pickups?
Richard, are you concerned that because of the legality of captive bred lion hunting, there are literally thousands of lions in cages with now a fate unknown because of the decline in the hunting industry?
It is a concern for us, and we need to find solutions for those lions and figure out a way forward that benefits the entire wild lion population and captive bred lion population.
How
As
can you
stipulated.
stop all those breeders doing what they do?
We need to create certain economic incentives that are better for them. And that's why we've gone to these 8 farms. We want to ensure that only what is sustainable to be harvested is harvested, and that we have a better and higher accordance than currently stipulated.